this video, we will be looking at starting the Mirage 2000C from cold, including the necessary INS alignment. We will go through a simplified engine startup procedure, the concept of initial position, the operation of the PCN or the Navigation Control Panel, how to perform an INS alignment under both normal conditions and with a pre-existing stored alignment, the necessary systems required to get you off the ground, and a quick sweep of the cockpit to check for readiness. Hello fellow virtual aviators, we're in our much beloved Mirage 2000C, and today we are going to go through the procedure for getting her started from cold. Now, if you know me or I've flown with you on a multiplayer server, you'll know that I'm not a real pilot and I'm not a hardcore milsim-er, I just like to play the game. So this will not be exactly from the manual, but if you're just starting out in the Mirage, then I hope this will be useful for you in getting her ready for action. So the first thing I like to do before anything is engage the parking brake, which is done with this lever here, right click. We're then going to use the F10 menu to ask the crew chief to remove the wheel chocks.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.
It's at this point that I usually do my rearming with the Alt' menu. For the purposes of this video, we won't be arming up with it, but this is the time that I would normally do it, just in the usual fashion. Then I'm going to close the canopy. Disengage the canopy lock with a right click. Reach up, pull the canopy down, and left click to close and seal. Next, we're going to add power and fire up the engine, and most of this is done on the right-hand console here. With the right click, we're going to switch the battery on, and just verify that the 3 alternator switches are also on as well. Turn on our fuel pumps, engage our fuel cutoff. The ignition selector here can be either left or right. Lift this cover, and depress the engine start switch. The engine should begin to spool up, and we're going to monitor this on the RPM gauge on the front right dash. When it reaches 11%, we're going to move the throttle out of idle, back, and wait for it to spool up further. It should get up to about 60% before settling a little bit lower than that, normally about 56. I'm going to check the temperature gauge just underneath, make sure that isn't in the red, and everything's good to go. Now we need to cycle the hydraulics of our flight control system, and I like to do this at this point. Simply move the control stick left and right, forward and back, and the rudder pedals 3 or 4 times. Now we can do the next step a little bit later, but I like to do it now. We're going to test our autopilot system with this switch here. Right click to lift the cover, and right click to run the test. Now, with the engine running and stable, we can now align our INS system. This is our inertial navigation system. It's the primary navigation system on the Mirage 2000C, and it's essentially a system that can tell where the aircraft has moved in all of the Cartesian directions, latitude, longitude, and altitude. It does this by a series of sensitive, but not perfect, gyroscopic instruments in the aircraft. And because it can tell how the aircraft has moved, it can tell where the aircraft is, which is obviously vital for navigation. However, in order for this information to have any meaning, the Mirage needs to know where it started from, its initial position, and we need to program this into the aircraft's computer. We do this on the PCN, in French the Poste Commande Navigation, or the Navigation Control Panel, and the PSM, the Poste Selecteur de Mode, or the Navigation Configuration Panel. Now, because I'm a barbarian, I'm going to use the English terms for them, the Navigation Control Panel and the Navigation Configuration Panel. Now this here at the top is the Navigation Control Panel, and this here is the Configuration Panel. They're both part of the same system, even though they're not together on the console. Switch the system on with this switch here, which is on the configuration panel, I'm going to switch it to standby or VEI if you're using the French cockpit. That the other knob on the configuration panel is set to N. This is the operational selector and N stands for knob. You should now see that the PCN Navigation Control Panel is powered up, and it's time now to input our initial position. Now, our position, or where the Mirage thinks it is represented by waypoint 00, which you can see here. We need to double check that this corresponds to our actual position. Now, the easiest way of doing this is on the knee board. The Mirage 2000 has a very cool feature on its pilot sign-out sheet, and you can see that right in the centre there it gives our initial position in terms of latitude, longitude and altitude. The crew chief has also very kindly written in the middle that alignment is required in red, so that tells me that the plane is not aligned, it doesn't know where it is, so we need to perform this full process. Grab a pencil and some paper and scribble down the initial position coordinates. To set the initial position, I'm going to select any unused waypoint by first pressing prep and then selecting any waypoint unused, so let's use number 10. And I can see straight away that there's no information saved in waypoint 10. Using the parameter switch on the PCN, we're going to select LG. This stands for latitude and longitude, and the two numbers on the display, displayed with zeros, represent these two numbers. We're going to change them to the initial position. So the first one I'm going to change is the latitude. To do that, I'm going to press the left plus, which will give me this display. I want to select north with the 2 key, and then input the latitude from the kneeboard. Even the numbers you won't be able to see on the display. Then press insert to enter it. We're going to do the same for the longitude. So select that, we're going to use the right plus. We know that it's in easting, and again input the longitude from the kneeboard. When ready, press insert to enter. We also need to add the altitude information from the kneeboard, so we need to change the parameter setting. It was 45 meters. So the knob there, turn it to the left to select altitude, and we're given two numbers here on the display. One represents the altitude in feet on the left, and one represents the altitude in meters on the right. So we need to change the meters data entry, which is the one on the right, so we're going to select the right plus. It's plus or minus, so it's plus to say above sea level, and it was 45 meters. Insert PCN will convert this to feet on the left-hand display, 148 feet. Now I want to tell the Mirage that the information in waypoint 10 is our initial position. To do this, we're going to change the INS mode to Align, ALN. We'll change the INS operational mode to STS, which stands for Status, which is a monitoring mode, and you'll see that Align ALN is flashing on the PCN display. Press the Validate button below the parameter switch to begin the alignment process. After a few seconds, you will see that the number on the top right of the PCN display has started to count down from 100. This represents the quality of the alignment. And the best quality of alignment you can have is a value of 0, so we need to wait for this to count down. It normally takes about 8 minutes to do the full alignment. After about 4 minutes, you'll get some additional information on the display, the 4, and a countdown here showing 61, 60, 59, etc. This is the final stage of the alignment, and will count down from stage 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And the countdown gives you an idea of the number of seconds remaining in each stage. Now you don't need to sit there like a lemon waiting for that to happen. You can do other stuff while the alignment process is happening. So I'm going to get some systems set up. Now if this was the real world, a lot of the stuff that I'm about to do you wouldn't do until you actually got into the air. But we're going to save some time and do it now. Now what I tend to do is work from the right console across the front to the left console and then sweep backwards, as you'll see. So we're going to start with some systems that are on this right console here because we're already over there. The first thing we're going to do is get our countermeasures set up. So we're going to turn on our countermeasure system with this switch here to the square. Jammer on, RWR on, missile launch system on, decoy dispenser system on and a program selected, and the M4 IFF system switched on. I then normally switch on 4 switches on the far right, backup ADI on, pitot heat on, emergency hydraulics on, and the audio warning on. Cancel the audio warning. Switch on the HUD, and switch on the VTP radar display. Let that warm up. Into the left console, our autopilot test has run. The green light shows it's all fine, so we're going to close that. The second test for the flight control system, right click to lift the guard, left click to start the test, and silence the warning. We're going to sweep back from the left console to the right now, and we're going to first switch on our radar and set it to warm up. Turn on any external lights you need. So let's go for anti-collision, nav, and the taxi light. Switch on your 2 radios. This switch here will depend on what you're armed with. We're going for air-to-air because we have no heavy stores, but I am going to switch on the gun. Encage and calibrate your standby ADI. Hear any caution that you may have. Select and switch on your radar altimeter, and set your bingo fuel. Depends on the mission, I normally go for about 1,200. By this time our fly-by-wire test should have completed, so we can close that. And switch on our nose wheel steering indicated by the blue light. Our INS alignment is finished and was successful. I know this because it says prêt on the display, which is the French word for ready, and it is no longer counting down. I can therefore select nav using the mode selector, and normal mode N using the operational selector. It is also good practice to return the parameter switch to latitude and longitude. We are now all set and ready to depart. Now, if you're playing on an online server such as Georgia at War or Flashpoint Levant, the chances are you're going to spawn into a already aligned aircraft. This is a simulation of either yourself or the crew chief having already aligned the aircraft previously and the aircraft having not been moved since. If that's the case, the plane knows exactly where it is and which way it's facing, so we can do a stored heading alignment, which is significantly quicker. So, to demonstrate this, we're going to do the startup procedure again, except this time with the stored alignment INS process. I'm also going to introduce 2 errors in the startup procedure, and these errors are things I often forget to do, so see if you can spot them before we highlight them. Initially, the startup procedure is the same, so let's go through that. Let's put the brake on, parking brake. Let's have the crew chief remove the wheel chocks.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Copy.
We'll arm
Wheel
up
chocks
as
are now
required
removed.
and close the canopy. Battery power on, fuel pumps on, fuel cutoff engaged, lift the cover, start the engine. Monitor to 11%. Bring the throttle out of idle, return it into the idle position, and wait for the engine to spool. And start our autopilot test and commence the INS. Now if we bring up the kneeboard here, we're given the initial position, but now it says ALCM available. That means we have a stored alignment ready to go. we do not need to input our initial position into the PCN Navigation Control Panel. The only thing that we need to do is to just double check that it is correct. It should be, because our pilot sign-out sheet says that it is. So let's switch on the INS system to standby. And we can see there that the latitude and longitude is already in position. So let's just double check that, make sure it looks correct, which it does. And we'll just double check the altitude as well, 45 meters, that's correct. Because this is a stored alignment, we're going to change the mode to STH or ALCM on the French cockpit and click validate. This will start the alignment process, and a stored alignment normally takes about 90 seconds. In the meantime, let's go through our usual startup procedures. So, starting on the right console, 4 switches, cancel, switch on the HUD, switch on the VTB radar, close that and start the fly-by-wire test, switch the radar to standby, external lights as required, radio's on, config switch as required, gun on. Uncage and calibrate the standby ADI. Switch on the radar altimeter and set your bingo fuel. Oh, there's a mistake. Did you spot it? Our fly-by-wire test has returned a negative result indicated by the red light. This is because we didn't cycle our hydraulics in our flight control systems. So what we need to do is cancel the test, cycle the hydraulics, and start the test again. Close, cycle, and restart the test. Remember to cancel that master warning. We'll check the status of our INS and we can see that Pret is flashing, meaning that we're ready to go. So we can change our mode to navigation and our operation to normal. Nose wheel steering on. And we're just about ready to go, so we just need to do a sweep of the cockpit, just double check everything looks correct before we move off. Have you spotted the second mistake I've done? I forgot to put my countermeasures on. Now of course I could do this later when I'm in the air, but it's part of my own personal startup procedure, so I'll do it now. One final sweep. The only warning light should be the parking brake. Our nose wheel steering is on. Our fly-by-wire test was successful. We're ready to taxi and go on our mission. Well, I hope that was useful for you. I would encourage you to develop your own startup procedure based on mine. Please feel free to do the usual thing, like, comment and subscribe. Virtual aviators, I'll hopefully see you online in the skies, but until then, this is Reiver. Let's go.